or some place where they have a lot of really good looking trees and things that like stay perfect all the time. There's times where I've been, walking around. I think I remember this Mall of America when first time I visited. They had a big tree in their amusement park area. And I was like, this looks so real. It looks so good, right? It's like, wow, this is like amazing. And there've been times where I've just been like, how does they keep it like looking so perfect all of the time? And then you realize that it's artificial, it's plastic. It's very good art. And it serves a purpose, but it bears no fruit. It can't reproduce itself. And if some little kid comes along and breaks off a branch, well, that branch is gone. This passage of Scripture has always been very interesting to me because it tugs at the realities that we see around us and also at the things that we don't necessarily want to maybe acknowledge within us as well. In this passage, Jesus is kind of wrapping up his Sermon on the Mount. He's, whether it was one event or whether it was a compilation series, if you read Matthew 5, 6, and 7, you will find some of the best teaching that exists in all of human history. Profound in its example for how it is calling out something that is not necessarily always valued in our society today, but that actually leads to life if practiced. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. It's like the first part of that message coming in. He starts with these statements about being meek and a peacemaker, being blessed when you suffer, and then leading on to say throughout it, it was said this, but I tell you this. It was said an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, love your enemies. Bless those that curse you. Do good to those that hate you. He brings a message that is hard for the religious establishment to accept because they were very much focused on the outward things. Let's look like we're righteous. Let's wash our hands the right way. Let's wear the right clothes. Let's show up at the right events and be seen to be recognized for how good we are. And let's not hesitate to call onto the table those who don't look or act or do what we do. That was how it was. And Jesus is speaking to the crowds, and the crowds are like, but those guys are all hypocrites. And they recognize that in here, right? Without even having to say, well, he actually calls them out too at times. Maybe not exactly in the Sermon on the Mount, but Jesus understood that this was true in his culture where he was living. That there were people who looked religious on the outside, but had nothing on the inside that would sustain them. They could not produce fruit that would last. And so he challenges us and he speaks to us today in this to ask ourselves the question, do we know how to find good fruit? And how to define good fruit? I don't know, you go grocery shopping. That's one of the things I have to do. And actually kind of enjoy because I put in my headphones and I listen to podcasts and I ignore everybody else. And then inevitably I will see somebody I know in the store and I go, oh, I have to take my headphones off. Got to talk to them and be nice, Not that I try to get rid of them, but I'm so happy when I get to go on and put my headphones back in and continue my podcast. Sometimes we're like that. I shouldn't be that way. Confession time, I guess. But anyways, that was not what I was going to say. But we go to the grocery store, right? And you have to buy fruit. Trisha likes avocados. I cannot do a very good job of picking a good avocado. In fact, most of the times they intentionally disguise them in bags with purple string around them, and you can't even see them well if you hold them up. Sometimes they taste great, and sometimes they taste awful, or they're not ripe yet. Oftentimes, the only way you really get to know whether fruit is good or not doesn't come from how it looks on the outside. You actually have to taste it. Now, I will not do that in the grocery store. I know people who will, who you go behind them and you're like, they just opened that whole container and they took like a handful of grapes or blueberries or something and they tasted them right there in the store before buying them. And actually they taste them from the one and then they close the lid and they grab the other one that's full. You've never seen anybody like that at the grocery store? I can't do that. I look at that and go, that's like shoplifting. I can't do that. I never touch a fruit. Anyways, that's me. I can't do it, right? But people who really care about getting good fruit and don't want to do it, they have to taste it to know. And I think there's something about that we need to make sure we're thinking about when we engage with this passage of Scripture. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction. But small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. He says, watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ferocious wolves. This is important for us today. Because we live in a world where you are not always influenced by people you know, right? In fact, there's an entire industry called social media influencers. Have you ever listened to one, heard one, tuned into one on a podcast, subscribed to one on your Instagram, followed their lives and their stories? They can be of anything. They can be teaching you how to be healthy. They can be teaching you how to follow God. They can be teaching you how to achieve success in your life. They could just be teaching you what cosmetics you need to buy to make sure you look pretty. Social media influencers exist all over in every spectrum. And in our media-heavy society today, it is everywhere. But what is true about a social media influencer is kind of this. You have no idea if they are a wolf in sheep's clothing or not. Impossible. You cannot tell on the outside, because what is social media except a perfectly curated feed of everything you want the world to see about you? Now, some people are pretty careless about that. Other people treat it with a great deal of respect. And they would never let you see anything they don't want you to see. So when you follow somebody who's an influencer, you are seeing exactly the story they want you to see. And you have no idea what life is like behind the closed doors. But somehow in our society, we have almost gotten to the stage of worshiping social media influencers. They have such a powerful impact on our lives that companies readily give them products to sell to you because they know it's far better investment than a commercial on TV, which nobody watches anymore. And then when you hear that social media influencer talk about how wonderful this product is, they're like, well, I was provided with the product to be up front as a free gift, but my opinions are my own, and I'll say what I want to say about it. But you never know what story you're getting. And it could be great. It could be wonderful. It could be life-changing information that you take and apply to your life, and it does good things. But you don't actually know what goes on behind that person's life. I think Jesus is speaking to that a little bit, right? There's the religious leaders who look like they put on a good show, but in behind closed doors, do they live up to what they present on the outside. Likewise, what do we care about for ourselves? When you think about your fruit, when you think about your impact on the world, are you mostly concerned about your presence, your image? What do people think of me? Or are you more interested in knowing God and being known by God and letting your actions reflect that relationship? It's really easy for us to come and gather in church today and all smile at each other and tell each other everything's okay, even when it's not, and live like we love to sing the songs on Sunday, but the rest of our lives could be in whatever order or chaos they are. And maybe no one knows. And maybe we don't want anyone to know, to think that we're broken somehow, that we can't do what we want to do on the outside. So we sometimes, even us, even those of us in the church, will guard our image like these social media influencers. We want people to see the nice side of us. The heart of this passage is trying to help us understand that the fruit of our lives is not something that we manufacture on the outside. It's not a beautiful art project that sits in a mall and has a perfectly ripe apple on that tree 365 days a year for 25 years. The fruit of our lives comes from having deep roots connected to the source of life, which is Jesus. And as his life bubbles up through us and out of us into the world around us, we will produce fruit that is to be consumed and eaten, not to just look pretty on a tree. It's not about what we say or what we want people to see about us. It's about how much nourishment comes from us that goes into the world around us, that fruit actually takes an effect. So I want to talk to you about few things this morning. We're just going to summarize them quickly. But the first part is to ask yourself a question: where am I at? So I like to think of it as kind of like a vector. I don't know if I've talked about this before here or not, but it's an idea that I've been wrestling with for a long time, thinking about how to describe our lives. Where basically a vector is like a line with like a direction that it's pointing towards and a magnitude or a size, right, of like intensity. But I think we have in our lives often equated it to say you're either in or you're out of our group, right? You're either in or out of being a Christian. You're either in or out of being a good person, maybe. Are you on the right spot or not? And I think that's too narrow of a category because it doesn't recognize the fact that we are all on a journey. What I love about that line with an arrow is the idea that we are all on a journey somewhere, right? We're not stationary, we change every day. Our cells die, our bodies continue to reproduce so that we sustain life. We face conflicts and challenges and relationships and choices and things that happen to us that we have no choice about. And every one of those things impacts our direction a little bit, right? And you can either allow those things to change your focus and start pointing in different directions, or you can realign yourself intentionally to point towards Jesus. And I think that the call for us is to think about how do we orient ourselves towards Jesus day after day after day, so that we keep moving in the right direction. So that's the first part. Ask yourself the question, am I actually moving toward Jesus? Through my actions, my attitudes, my thoughts? Am I actually trying to be more like Jesus? Or am I trying to do something else? Sometimes we were more interested in preserving our sanity, right? Life is chaotic. I'm just gonna take care of me, right? Sometimes that's what we have to do. Like we come up, right? We point the arrow inward for a bit. We go, I just need some me time. Just leave me alone. Box me out. There's times where I feel like that. The challenge isn't that you take that. The question is, what happens after? Does the me time become something that is the permanent direction of your life? Or are you reorienting yourself back toward Jesus? Something happens and there's a crisis in your life and you have to deal with that crisis. It could be a health crisis. It could be the loss of a loved one. It could be a car accident. There could be all kinds of things that would kind of impact your life and knock you off course. And there's a time where you have to deal with the situation. But the question is, do you end up continuing to deal with that situation forever? Or do you reorient yourself to Jesus and move again? There are times in our lives where we get stuck and we can't produce fruit because we're not actually focused on the one who can feed us with fruit. We're focused on the other thing that got in our way. And I think one of the biggest impacts that I've seen in my life is knowing that when faced with these crisis times in our lives, when faced with the stuck problem of being caught in a rut, it doesn't come from focusing on the rut. I don't know if you've thought about this or not, but if your car falls into a sinkhole, which with all the freeze and thawing we've had, there's a lot of sinkholes about these days. I saw a whole apartment complex in Edmonton just crater their parking lot. If your car gets stuck in a sinkhole or a large pothole, right? Looking at the pothole, examining that pothole, understanding that pothole, even knowing how that pothole got there, and understanding the complexities of it, and how it may have been intentional or it may have been accidental, and knowing everything you can about that pothole will not do one bit to get your car out of that pothole. But somehow in our lives, we think that if we just focus on the problem more, that we will find a way out. What you really need if you get really stuck in a pothole, you need to find a savior, a tow truck, to pull you out of the pothole and put you back on the right path. That's what we're talking about here when you want to bear fruit in your life. You can get stuck in potholes where you're focused on the wrong thing that will never solve your problem, instead of looking to the one who's able to take you beyond your problem. So check your vector. Am I moving towards Jesus? Secondly, if you're not, how can you refocus yourself? How can you make that call for the tow truck? How can you redirect your attentions to Jesus and say, Jesus, I've been looking at the wrong thing. I've been so focused on this problem that I haven't actually looked to you. I wanted you to fix it, but I didn't actually want you to change me to get there, which is another way of dealing with that, right? A lot of times we're just like, God, just solve this, right? It's like, just make the pothole go away. Isabella, she doesn't take medicine. I'm going to talk about her. She's not here. I shouldn't do that. But she does not want to take medicine at all, ever. She's coughing up a storm. I'm like, can I just give you something to help? She's like, no, I have prayer. I'm like, I appreciate your faith. I do. I love you, and I want you to be better. But God also inspired doctors and medicine to help us with some of these things, and it can help make it go faster. She's like, no, it's all I need. But I think sometimes we're like that with the pothole problem. We're like, God, just take my car out of the pothole. I don't know. You just pick it up and move it over there, and it'll be fine. right? But we don't want to do the work of actually talking to the tow truck driver to get it out. And we might even resist him if he comes, and we're just like, no, God's going to like move my car, so I don't have to worry about it. We can't produce fruit like that. The experience of producing fruit in our lives comes out of a contact relationship with God, where we are actually interacting with, being moved by, and engaging with him and being used in the solution as well. Very rarely does it happen that the problem gets solved simply by a prayer that God says, okay, yeah, it's done, fixed. That can happen, and it's awesome when it does, and it's a miraculous and wonderful thing, but 99% of the time, it's you participating in the process. So what do you have to do to reorient? Thirdly, we need to think about who's influencing us. And be conscious of the fact that when we're influenced by people who do not know us and we do not know them, there's an element of risk there, right? You do not know if that medical advice you heard on TikTok is going to solve your problem, right? But there's a lot of it out there. It's going to sound wonderful and amazing and exactly like what you need. But what do you really need to do? Well, you should probably talk to your doctor and someone who knows you and understands your medical history and go, does this make sense for me given my circumstances and condition, right? And then if the doctor who looks at it and goes, yeah, that actually looks like a really good idea, or no, that's a bunch of bunk, you have input from someone who actually knows you. Spiritually, we need the same thing. We need to make sure that we're taking the inputs that come to us, the ideas about what we should believe, what we should value, what's true, and we need to bounce it off some mirrors. The first mirror we should look at is, does it look like Jesus? That's a very good first mirror that we should ask about everybody that we're listening to and taking advice from about our souls, right? Does this person's message, attitude, actions, words look like Jesus? Second thing is that we should take that into our community, into the church. And we should say, hey, look, I'm looking at this, and this is where I'm at in my life. Do you think this would help me get closer to Jesus? Do you have anyone in your life where you would actually have a conversation like that and say, is this path something that would take me closer to Jesus? Do we reflect to each other? Do we seek out that actual, tangible truth from someone who knows us? Or someone who could say, hey, can you help me understand which way my life is pointing? Is my vector, is my arrow pointing towards Jesus, or am I pointing at something else? Am I missing it? Because sometimes in our lives, we can't see our own problems, right? We don't know that we're stuck sometimes. Sometimes we are just like frustrated and anxious, and we think we're doing the right thing, but we haven't actually asked anybody to look at our lives and say, am I going the right way? We need to be open to that. And we need to be respectful of that as well if we get asked by somebody to say, am I going the right way? To say, hey, can I look at somebody's life and ask the question, does this look like it's going towards Jesus or not? Do I know Jesus enough that I could say that with integrity? Or will I just tell somebody what they want to hear so they'll like me? See how easy it is that we come be like we're on social media in real life? There's times in our days we go and interact with people, and we really just want the likes, right? Give me the high fives, tell me I'm doing a good job, don't get in my way, right? Don't tell me I'm doing something wrong. We don't want that, and we don't ask for it. Many times in our communities, we live in these kind of sheltered lives where we come, we say we're all good on Sundays, we smile, maybe we're struggling a little bit, pray for me, and then we kind of love each other, and then we go home, and we forget about each other until next Sunday. No, maybe that doesn't happen here. I know a lot of you guys talk to each other during the week. That's awesome. You're engaged with each other. You're thinking about each other. But we need to be open to asking other people, hey, am I going the right way with this? People we trust who recognize Christ, what Christ looks like, and can see it in us, and can help us to take that plank out of our own eye before looking for the speck in someone else. And notice I said, I want you to go ask somebody. I didn't say go find people in the congregation and tell them what they're doing wrong. Okay? I did not say that. Please don't do that. But if you are invited to participate in that sacred act of helping someone reorient to Jesus, take that seriously and honestly. And look at how we might build up and encourage each other to follow Jesus. And finally, we don't create fruit that can be tasted necessarily all that much by ourselves. Like, we are called to be in community. We are called to serve together, to worship together, to give together, to reach out together. And I think one of the best ways to know that we're producing fruit is when all of those things that we've done, we've taken the influence, we've taken like the inspiration from God, from Scripture, from a pastor we listen to online. We've taken that into our lives, we've oriented ourselves towards Jesus, we pointed towards it, and then we feel good about ourselves and we're like, I'm on the right track. And I don't have to do anything. I just incorporated all that knowledge, right? I got it. I figured out I'm thinking the right way. I told you what I'm thinking. You said I'm thinking the right way, right? We got this. We're all going the right way, right? As long as we think the right things, we're good. But that actually doesn't produce any fruit that's worth tasting, right? We just have a really good-looking tree. It can stand up to an argument and win and say, yeah, that's a good defensible stance you have. Where it lives itself out is as community people, as individuals working together in the body, we do the things we say we believe. We worship God together. We're doing that today. We're engaging. But then we could also be looking at how do we serve together? How do we give back to our community together? How do we reach out to those who are in need, who are hurt, who are broken, who are lost, who are lonely, and help them together? Because that's the stuff that's going to produce fruit that the world's going to look at and taste. They'll experience it firsthand, not through some talk that somebody gives, but through actually doing it together. And they'll go, wow, this God thing must be real and good and worthwhile because it tastes awesome. But sadly, we find ourselves oftentimes defending those who say the right thing but don't do the right thing. Or those who sound like it's kind of like a good thing. It doesn't seem all that awful, but the fruit is bad. Have you ever witnessed that? Somebody who kind of like sounded good. Well, we've all seen it. Don't have to go very far to know that there's great leaders within the church who did great things and lived secret lives that were filled with sin. We didn't know them, we worshiped them from afar. Maybe they didn't have anybody they could look at and go, is my orientation right? Somebody who actually knows me, who sees me when I'm on my bad days and not just on Sundays. Not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of my Father in heaven. That's the fruit argument. It kind of brings it right to a close, right? It's not just about knowing the right things and following the right people and having the right thoughts, but it's actually doing something with that actually impacts the world around us. Not the other way around, by the way, right? If we go the other way around, we could just become a wolf in sheep's clothing who does a whole bunch of nice things for people to see. Oh, I'm going to go give back to my community and volunteer and do all of this, but I'm never going to actually deal with the inner workings of my heart or soul or know Jesus. That just puts us right back at the first step. We need to be digging in with Jesus, getting those thoughts right, and then letting it flow out through what we do. And that's not perfect. Like, we're never going to be perfect right off the bat with that, but that needs to be the trajectory of our vector, right? I'm pointing towards Jesus, I'm learning about Jesus, I'm growing with Jesus, and I'm doing the things Jesus would have me do that look like him and produce fruit in the world. That's our call. That's our message. And I hope that this week you will take time to do just those two things. One, think about something that you can do this week with someone else in our community. Maybe that's a phone call. Maybe that's going to visit somebody who's shut in or alone. Maybe it's looking for something you could do with someone else in this congregation to bless somebody else. And second, think about who it is that you can ask to examine your vector. Someone you could talk to say, am I going the right way in my life, in my actions, in my thoughts? And ask for honest feedback. Because sometimes we just don't see it. Maybe we're doing right on and we're going to get really good encouragement from that. Maybe we're going to get a refocus. But if we enter humbly into those conversations and say, God, show me what I need to do differently, and we share that with one other person, that creates energy that can be used to change ourselves and not just be stuck in the rut we've been stuck in. So that's my prayer for you today. God bless you. I hope you have a great rest of your week. We're going to come and sing our closing song. I just want to say, God is not finished with us yet. He's not. Come on, Addison. God's not finished. He's got something more to do in my life and something more to do in yours. Are we willing to go with him? Let's sing together, Build My Life. Stand up, please, as we sing.